Now we will move to our professional knowledge enrichment part of today's program. For our guests and participants, my honor to introduce and invite our distinguished speaker, Johan Raslan and Dominic Griffin Obi, with the first topic of the Director's Talk series, Rethinking Governance and Board Resilience in a Pandemic Era. Director's Talk is an exclusive program designed by VIOD to voice up corporate governance ideas and best practices to share and promote corporate governance trends and dedication to ESG for the sustainable development of the Directors Network. Uh, Johan Raslan and Dominic Scriven, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Trin. Let me pick up the ball there. Thank you for your elegant emceeing of the event today. And a warm afternoon from Saigon to all of you. And hello, Johan. How are you over there?
I am fine. Thank you, Dominic.
Excellent. If I can just take the reins on this one, thanking Tan Sri Sarina for your elegant speech. Thank you. And Chairman Tan, thank you very much. And Mr. Zung of the SSC, and also Kyle of the IFC. Thank you so much. So Johan and I agreed that we would have a bit of a fireside chat on some of the issues that might be of relevance to viewers from Malaysia and also viewers from here in Vietnam. And we had thought of tackling a bit of an introduction to each institute, brief comments on COVID, some comments on current issues of concern to us in our institutes, and then a few brief comments on climate. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm not sure how much we can get in, but let's start. Johan, would you be able to, for the benefit of Vietnamese viewers, give us a little bit of a flavor of the ICDM journey, how you got to today?
Yes, thank you, Dominic, and thank you all to all of your excellencies. We are about 4 years old, but we were conceived really by the Securities Commission of Malaysia and also the Central Bank of Malaysia, who decided that corporate governance needs to be improved a lot, and the professionalization of the directors needs to happen quite fast. Since then, we've gone quite far. Actually, we have 800 members or more than 800 now, 60 corporate members, and we've held more than 130 sessions of training, webinars, and so on. And in those, we've had about 8,500 people have attended those seminars. Our members are quite diverse, and that is quite important. Mostly Malaysian, but we also have others from Singapore, Thailand, China, and so on. Most of our members are men. 2/3 of our members are men. 1/3 are women. And maybe I'm sure we will achieve a 50-50 parity, I hope, one day. Most of our work is done because of COVID now. We've done a lot of virtual seminars. And actually that has been quite a good thing to allow people to tune in and listen and to share and to learn. We think actually we have helped to improve the level of governance in Malaysia, the knowledge of directors. And we've also brought on new directors, younger directors who become our members so that they can then be board ready to be a board member. So we've done a lot of work. And some of the things we do, of course, is training. But another thing that we do is to help companies to find good directors. So we will supply directors to boards. So it's been quite a fast journey over the last 4 years.
Yeah, Johan, if I could say, I think that's extremely fast. I'm surprised you weren't arrested for speeding. 8,500 people have been through your courses. That's a really remarkable number. And also a membership of up to 800 individuals. So I know there are colleagues from Vietnam observing this. And I think we should be inspired because our own case, VIOD, I suppose we're a private organization, private sector organization, but we have also some oversight, sponsorship, and support. So Mr. Zung is watching. He's from the Vietnamese securities regulator, and also Vu Bang, who is a sort of senior advisor to VIOD. But yes, you're quite right. We're a sort of private organization. In year 3, I think our claim to fame is really we've made now, we're on the way to 300 people through our directors certification courses. We've got a strong corporate, initial corporate network of about 16, I think, corporations. And we're just about to launch the individual membership. I think our universe is really 1,600 public companies, all of whom need, to bone up their independent directors. Regulations now require at least one independent board member. So if we can get one per person, we'll be a quarter of the way to you. That's what I think. That's what our target is. So interesting. Is it a company? The ICDM legally is it a company or a?
Yes, it is. And we have our funding is from a fund that is supervised by the Securities Commission.
Yes. Okay.
So we are not private like you see.
Yes, yes.
But we have that because the regulators feel I think they must put money behind this effort, because if we help to professionalize directors, it will make the capital market safer, and when the capital market is safer, people will invest more, and that helps in turn. It helps the Securities Commission and all the regulators in Malaysia. So it is really a good investment on the part of the regulators.
Yes, I can certainly see that. It's interesting here in Vietnam, we've taken a slightly different approach, which is to say that because Vietnam has a strong policy platform of enfranchising the private sector, and to do so, the state is quite keen to stand back in areas where it is not needed to participate. So I think that's the rationale here. But at the end of the day, I think as you've commented in a conversation with me previously, Johan, we have the same strategic objectives, which is to promote the cause of good governance, promote most particularly good boards, good quality directors, good board practice. And I think that's a great sort of message for us today, not least through the signing of what I didn't understand was ASEAN's first cross-border institute signing. That's to be congratulated to both our Madam Chairman, I'm sure. Johan, no discussion is possible without talking about COVID, is it? And I think you've told me that Malaysia is some way ahead of Vietnam, but it would be interesting if you could just share a few of the sort of top priority thoughts as companies have emerged from COVID in terms of boards and the approach of companies.
Yes, I suppose, Dominic, that the Malaysian companies were hit by COVID quite early on because of lockdown. So lockdowns came in and forced companies to try to work within that whole environment. So people staying at home cannot go to office, yet have to try to make sure that businesses keep on running. Of course, banks, some other financial companies, some companies were allowed to operate all the way through, but most were not, and therefore have had to essentially do a kind of business continuity exercise in all of that. So there's been a lot of emergency work to ensure that business carried on, but control environment remains strong. And that's important. And what we've seen, of course, is, unfortunately, when there is such a thing as lockdown and COVID, bad guys also want to profit and make money as well. And so we've seen cybercrime has started to increase, and people take advantage of the fact that when we operate our companies working from home, from a remote location, we try to make it all work. But sometimes we feel we have to cut corners. And this is where the bad guys try to get in and steal money through cybercrime, for example. So your password controls, that kind of thing, must be very strong. So we in ICDM have had courses on control and cybersecurity, that kind of thing. And that's been very useful for members.
Yes, I'd like to pick up that point about cyber, actually. We had the same experience in Vietnam, COVID, problems, nightmare. And what happens? Yet more nightmare with cyber attacks. We've had in my own firm, we've decided that on the risk dashboard that we produce, that the cyber box should always be red and never green, as a matter of policy, because the risk has appreciated so much. I think here, if I could share back, we're obviously behind Malaysia in the chronology of dealing with this awful pandemic. I think the immediate concerns were for people, securing one's immediate staff and their families, vaccinations, that sort of thing. I think then flexibility, rigor, yes, as you're saying. I think also flexibility in business. And it's interesting that some businesses have been able to move relatively easily, like our own, this current discussion, really, to a sort of hybrid model. And then, of course, thinking about the community. So I think instead of thinking just of shareholders, maybe we're all beginning to think a bit more about stakeholders more broadly, I think, through that. And of course, hovering over all of this is the lesson that we've all had to learn about risk management, which somebody defined to me some time ago as imagine the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, and then plan that it does happen to you. And I think really with COVID, that's more or less what happened. So I hope that in Vietnam, we've all learned that risk management is a skill set that needs to be right at the front of board considerations. Yes.
That's really right. And so the importance of chief risk officer and the risk department in companies has gone up. It was always important in banks, insurance companies, but now all companies realize that they have to have risk management system. And if they're big enough to have a chief risk officer, and also most boards now have a risk committee. Maybe it is combined with another committee like audit, but really best practice is that it is separate, because they have so much work to do. And how the risk committee works, that is becoming an area that companies are looking at more carefully. So board members are really thinking about how does the risk committee work? What do they do when they meet to use the 2, 3, 4 hours, use it properly every quarter. So risk is a big issue.
Can I ask you to clarify something here that many of us find confusing? Many of us go, well, we have an audit committee and an audit function, so surely that's okay. Why do we need a risk function? And I believe it's fair to say that risk is ex ante, as they say. That is it is before things happen, and audit is after things happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's the way I look at it as well. Really, your audit committee is looking backwards, making sure that the numbers have been added up properly and accounted for properly. The risk committee has got to look forwards and into a blank sheet and try to imagine, as you say, what is the worst thing that could happen, looking forward, looking backwards. And so it's a different way of looking at things.
Yes, interesting. So clearly risk is what is important in dealing with disasters like COVID. If I could just break in here, say, I see we've got 100 people online, which is great. So re-echoing a warm welcome to you all. Please, anybody who has any questions for Johan or indeed myself or anybody else, the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen is there to be used. So please fire in any questions you have and we'll take them as we go along. Johan, I wondered if we could turn a little to some of the, the issues that are on the agenda of ICDM in general and in particular, and the Malaysian corporate scene in general. What are some of the sort of issues as we put COVID behind us, look to the future? I think you've in the past mentioned that drawn attention to the fact that the political environment in Malaysia is rapidly evolving. Huh?
But it is a more volatile environment politically than it was before. So governments have changed. And so this is something which is a bit new to Malaysians. In the past, you go for decades, the same government, basically. So this is something for Malaysian companies to get used to. And as a result, certainly in some of the state-owned enterprises, there have been changes of management, changes of board. So boards are actually looking at having separately, really, are looking at getting the right qualifications of directors on board. We also have a Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, and that is something which I would recommend for all countries to have, a code of corporate governance. And the latest Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance specifies a lot of duties for nomination committees in the board to take great care in how they select the new members. So now, for example, in the past, board membership was seen as being like a birthright. I will be because I've done well. They asked me to join the board, then I stay for 20 years on the board. That kind of thing is just not happening anymore in Malaysia. Now, it's mostly 9 years is the limit for an independent director. And now nomination committees are looking for specific skills, increasingly new skills like human resource. So you find that a lot of former chief human resource officers are becoming board members. You are looking also for people who know about ESG, sustainability, climate change. Our head of the Climate Governance Malaysia, which is an affiliated group network with ICDM, she's on she's on the call today and watching this. So they are looking for ESG directors, not just like in the old days. You're looking for accountant, lawyer, that kind of thing. There are new skills that boards are looking for.
So is it normal in Malaysia for a board to have I suppose a handbook or a memorandum stating how the board is put together, what the aim should be in terms of composition? Is that a standard thing, or?
More and more to have a code of business ethics or code of business conduct and other standard operating procedures or policies and procedures in writing, covering things like political matters, corruption, especially. You have to have that now in Malaysia. All manner of things, gifts. So whether we can accept gifts or not, more and more companies are refusing to accept gifts as a standard policy, in case it gives the perception of corruption. So just make sure there's none of that. I'm not sure if Mr. Vu did Mr. Vu have a question to ask?
Oh yes, anh Dũng giờ Thailand phải không anh? Không biết anh có câu hỏi đó mà anh phải unmute đó. Mình có nghe.
Anh có nghe được?
Dạ nghe rồi anh ạ. Dạ.
Anh anh được không?
Can you hear me? Yes, I have a question. I have a question for ICDM for Johan. As far as you are concerned, in Malaysia, the ICDM can include the members being SMEs and also other types of enterprises. So with the support of SC Malaysia, ICDM was established. So I would like to ask about the cooperation of the network of IODs in Malaysia to support for CG in Malaysia. This is my question. As far as I'm concerned, SC Malaysia had just issued
trong đó có những cái thúc đẩy cái quản trị công ty trong
a kind of regulation on promotion of CG practice in Malaysia. So I think this is about the effort of making a network of IODs or enterprises in Malaysia in order to promote the CG. We would like to learn from your experience and also your activities. For example, the establishment of forums or network or initiatives, etc. And from the perspective of the strategy of Malaysia on development of that network, what is the proportion of ESG? What would be the proportion for promotion of ESG in Malaysia? This is my question. Thank you. I think this is
a question for you and drawing on your experience. I think Mr. Zung was asking, do you have part of your activities focused on SMEs, and could you talk a little bit about that if there is a part of your activity which is there? And then second question from Mr. Zung is, could you share your thoughts as to what level of activity is devoted to ESG?
SME in Malaysia is a huge part of the economy. Corporate governance rules and best practice, when they came in the 1990s and especially in the year 2000, when the first Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance came in, mostly started with the bigger companies at the top, and the knowledge has spread downwards. But there are some SMEs which have very good corporate governance, as good or as the bigger ones. We try to do our work that can cover all types of companies, but we are also looking to see whether we can do more for SMEs. So we are trying to attract members, directors, and companies that are in the small and medium-sized enterprises sector, and to find out what they want. And when we know exactly what they want, we can do more work for them. So this is something new we are trying to do. So I cannot say that we are very good at it yet. On ESG, we have got a number of courses started on ESG, on climate governance, and that is why we tie up with Climate Governance Malaysia, or CGM. And in fact, CGM is also talking now to VIOD to establish the same kind of network of directors who are interested in climate change, because climate change is going to be a big problem for all countries in ASEAN, especially countries like Vietnam, where you have a lot of low-lying areas, and Malaysia is the same as well. So we have a lot of problems in common, and ESG is becoming big. Malaysia has just announced that they would like to be net zero by the year 2050, and that is just a few days ago, and that is going to provide a big boost. And companies will ask more for ESG courses. So we've done courses on it, just starting, and we will be doing more. So all these are areas, a very good question. So SME and ESG still quite new for us, but we are working hard at it.
So definitely focuses. Yes, thank you for that answer. Can I follow up with another question that's come in? I'm not sure who this is for actually, but the question is: will Vietnam make it compulsory for directors to have some basic skills if they are board members of listed companies? Well, maybe Johan, we could turn that to you and go. In Malaysia, are there obligatory skill sets or training qualifications that directors need to have on boards of public companies?
Not really, but the emphasis is on the nomination committee when they appoint new directors or when they recommend new directors to the board, that they must look carefully at the skills of those of the new directors. So it is now very common for companies for a nomination committee to formal interview of candidates, like you do for staff. Previously, before, you don't have interview for director. You know, this is done between friends. Nowadays, interview as though it's a staff. So that's a very professional way of doing things. So we're professionalizing the appointments.
That's fascinating. If I could share that then for our Vietnamese colleagues, the concept of a nomination committee that Johan has just shared with us. This is an important idea. We don't have much in Vietnam. The idea that there should be a committee of the board to look at the structure of the board and choose future candidates. And as Johan says, to interview them formally. Indeed, I'm on a board of a UK company, and it is current practice that the nomination committee must use a headhunting firm to select candidates. You can no longer just call up your friends and ask them to join. So this approach to board selection is an interesting one. Although in regards to that question, it looks like there's no compulsory skill sets. I think it's the answer.
But perhaps I would also mention that there are not compulsory skill set, but there's compulsory training. So there is a mandatory accreditation program for new directors. So if I'm the first time I become a director of a public listed company, I must attend this mandatory accreditation program, which is held by the stock exchange, holds that. And these are very good, very detailed programs of 2 days long.
Interesting.
And in your annual report of your company, you must show all the trainings that each director has attended. So the shareholders can see which director has attended training and which director has not bothered to attend training.
That's interesting. So while there's no compulsory qualifications per se, except the one you've just referred to, there is an obligation to disclose what level of skills and what level of training board members have. Yes. Further question here. Could Johan share what will be the new training programs of ICDM that you're planning to launch in the next year or two? Do you have any special modules you're introducing?
Well, as I mentioned, we run various things, but the new things will be mainly around involving ESG and climate change. So that will be new. We are also going to do the formal certification, like you do in VIOD. So that will be in the next few months. We will be doing a formal certification. And so if anybody like me, I want to get that, I join the course, and it has several modules of different areas of study that I must attend. And then I think there's an interview at the end of it to make sure I've attended properly. And we are very strong on attendance. You must attend. You can't just go in and go out and have tea. You must attend properly. So if anybody who joins the ICDM, they will see all the courses that are coming up for 2021, 2022. Anything that we have already planned, they will be shown to the members.
Excellent, excellent. Another question here, so we all recognize that there is a need for companies to fortify their resilience and to rethink governance at board level in this era. So what would you envisage as some of the key challenges you foresee for this to happen? So some of the key challenges for board at the top of the board agenda.
Well, I think the usual things of professionalism, so acting professionally when you are in the board, the independence. So independence of directors is important, and more and more the Securities Commission, the Central Bank, the Stock Exchange, they emphasize that a board member has a job to do, and the job is to be is not just to be the best friend of the owner, and to agree with everything the CEO and the owner say, that they must actually scrutinize and question and be skeptical and not just accepting of everything. So those independence, professionalism, also diversity. So that is another thing that if we get all these things in place, professionalism, independence, diversity, then in Malaysia, we feel that this will improve overall the quality of the boards. So we mentioned the diversity. Right now, I think in the bigger companies, about 1/4 of directors are women, female. In all companies, it's nearly 20%, but the bigger companies, it's 1/4. The aim is to have 1/3 of directors being female. But in my personal opinion, why not 1/2? Because the population is 1/2 men and women. Yes. But we are moving quite far forward with that. And also getting younger directors. And we in ICDM, we have our own board. And so we're trying to bring in, we brought in recently a couple of younger directors, one in their 30s, and that's important to us. We try to lead by example. And when we bring in the younger directors, they tell us what younger members of younger directors want out there in the marketplace. Yes. And it's the same if you're in any board of directors. Women directors, younger directors tell you what is it the younger people want from you in the market, and what do women want, and so on.
Yes, I think those three words, if I can pick out those three words, Johan, quite good. Professionalism, independence, and diversity. To me, those are three very, very strong words. In particular, I noticed one issue we have in Vietnam is that often people will sit on boards as a director because they want to represent their shareholding. Yeah. So you might have 5 directors, each owning 20%, and their responsibility in their own mind is to protect their 20%. But of course, by law, the responsibility of a board director is to represent the interests of 100% of shareholders, isn't it? And so that really leads to your points about professionalism and independence, something we I think are continuing to learn here in Vietnam. The diversity one, somebody made a comment at one of our training courses on the need for diversity of risk appetite, which I found a very interesting concept. So not just the age, the gender, the background, the education, but also the willingness to take risk, from the aggressive risk takers through to the really conservative people. I thought that was an interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
We're coming up to our time, I believe, which was stated to be 3:05. But let me slip in a question, if I may. Which elements of board strategy should be prioritized towards digital transformation? Although that may be a difficult question there, but because of the pandemic and the need for us to promote digital, are there any areas of board strategy that come to mind that need to be paid attention to?
Well, for me, well, I'm an accountant, so I am that part of the board that is more perhaps a bit cautious and risk averse, you know. And I'm thinking of compliance, risk management. Also, it'd be good for the boards to have digital and IT skills on boards now. But however, you got to be careful that these are skills that are relevant, not old skills, because IT changes so much. You have to be very careful that you're getting people in who are still current in their thinking. But if I could just say, I know we're coming to the end, you know, Dominic and friends from Malaysia and Vietnam, I make it sound as though we've done everything, we know all the answers. I do apologize. We don't know all the answers. We are ourselves learning. We have many problems, and this is why ICDM, you know, exists. And so we are wanting to improve things. We have got a few things that are quite good, you know, that our Securities Commission, Central Bank, and Stock Exchange has done, and we work on that. But I think we have a lot to learn, and that's why in this MOU between VIOD and ICDM, you know, we also want to learn from the things that you've done. For example, you are ahead of us in certification. We are behind you in that. So yes, there are many things that we feel we can gain from this, and we can actually create things together and maybe build some new things together. That's why it is so exciting to work with Vietnam from a Malaysian point of view.
Fantastic, Johan. Thank you. It's 3:06, so I'm not going to ask the last question, but in particular, I think your last statement is a perfect statement on which to end this dialogue, that really you're older than us, not much older, but you are older than us, so you've got a bit more experience, but we're both relatively young, and there's a lot ahead, and there's a lot of things that we can share with each other, and there's a lot of things we can do together. And I look forward to that very, very much. Thank you, Johan, for joining this discussion. And I think, if you have some comments, please make them. And then we must perhaps transfer back to Lei, is it? Or Trin?
Yeah, you can transfer it to me, Lei. Yeah, thank you, Johan and Dominic.